You are about to see Liora Adler, an active member in the Global Ecovillage Network and the co-founder of Gaia University, speaking at the UCSC Kresge Town Hall on Thursday, January 15, 2015. The event was hosted by the Kresge Common Ground Center, Education for a Just and Sustainable World. For more information, visit kresge.ucsc.edu/common ground.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming, and I can see the ripples from Dave Shaw in all of you. And that's one of my great joys in life, is to visit places where graduates of Gaia U or people I have met on caravan projects are now doing really amazing things. Andrew and I were just in Ecuador over December. And two graduates are working with people in a small village in Ecuador through the Lush company, which you may have heard of, international cosmetics company, and they're helping to finance this so that the local people can develop a cacao business and get the coconut oil from their products and sell them to Lush, and they convinced Lush to do their whole supply chain from permaculture to regenerative projects. So that was another experience of Ripple. So now we'd like to hear a little bit from you, and we're going to do a little exercise which is called Think and Listen. Have you done that with them? All right. So the way this works is you get to talk to your neighbor, and each person gets 3 minutes, and while that person's talking, you don't take away the microphone. This is not a conversation. This is each person's opportunity to have a little thinking time. And if you don't wish to speak, that's perfectly fine. And that's why we call it Think and Listen, because you can express your thinking or not. So, for example, if we were to do this together, we would decide who goes first. And your name is Cecile. And maybe Cecile goes first. And she would have 3 minutes to think about, talk about anything that she would like, though I'm going to give you a topic. So you can stick to the topic or not. When she's done, we switch, and I'll give you the timing, and then I get 3 minutes. Got it? Easy? Anyone have a question about it? Can everyone hear me okay? Yes? Question? Okay, so the topic is, what do I know about eco-villages, and what question might I have? And we're not going to take the questions right now, but we're going to take them at the very end, because during this whole thing, you're going to watch a slideshow that I prepared for you with some of my eco-village experience. And then you're going to go into smaller groups. You see these wonderful tables some of the students have set up. And you're going to do some design work on different aspects of eco-villages. At the end, you might still have the question that you thought of right now, or you might have that question answered. So we'll take questions at the end so that you'll have had the whole experience in which to then refine your questions or decide whether you have actually had them answered or not. Is that part clear? And if you don't want to talk about eco-villages, you can just talk about anything that you like. This is your time. More questions? Great. Okay, so just turn to a neighbor. Make sure that everyone has a partner. And if you don't know them, say your name. Decide who goes first.
Yeah, wait.
Okay, so hold your questions, as I said, as maybe some of your questions will be answered, and then at the end we'll make every effort to leave plenty of time for questions. And so now what we're going to do is see a slideshow that I prepared for you. Okay, testing. How's that? That's better, right? And maybe we can fill the lights Okay, so I prepared a slideshow. As you can see, I started out with some of the things that are happening in the world that are not so positive. And of 92 slides, there are only 3 that have to do with that. And I came to California recently. I'm not a California gal. I was born in New York and then lived in Latin America most of my life. So we're used to getting a realistic appraisal of the current situation. So I came to California and found that a lot of people are all into like, oh, don't even think about, or talk about, or look at any of the negative things. Have any of you experienced that kind of thing? Yeah. And don't even think about doing anything about it, no less. So I like to always remember that we do have some issues to work on, and I'm trusting that all of you are thinking about how to do that. So water pollution, that's a big one. The destruction of our natural environment. We've been going the wrong way in a lot of ways. And I'm sure you can think of other issues that I haven't mentioned, climate change being one. Anyone got any other issues that they're wanting to work on? Just throw them out, popcorn them out. You must know about, yep.
What about people connecting with other people?
People feeling isolated, not connecting with other people. Other ones? Racism, yep. Classism, ageism, able-bodyism. We've got a lot of isms. In Gaia University, we call that the matrix, which is a word we made up. But what we're talking about is the matrix of societal oppression. So that's definitely something that we need to work on. Yeah.
Noise pollution.
Noise pollution. Yep. Anyone else popping something else? Okay. So as I promised you, there are only 3 slides that have to do with the ills of the world, because now we're going to start looking at some of the solutions. So we can remember that in other parts of the world and in other times, people did not always live as we live here in California, USA. And they had natural buildings, for example, this African village. And back in 1320, in this little town of Totnes, where my husband Andrew Langford grew up, and also where the transition movement was born. I'll give him a little plug. He had prepared the fertile ground for that to happen, and that is actually a strategy. It's like, how can you be preparing in different places fertile ground so that seeds can start to pop up and grow. So as you can notice, this is a cot inn, licensed since 1320, and it's made out of cob. Do you know what cob is? Someone said yes. Yes?
Mixture of clay, and straw.
Yeah, it's a clay mixture, and for all the people who might say cob does not last, this building's been going since 1320, which is probably more than we can say about the Kresge residence halls that are going to be bulldozed very soon. This is another building. It's the Burnham Mansion. It's in upstate New York, and this one is, can anyone guess what kind of material this is made out of? This is a straw bale building, and somewhere in the 1850s, and it's quite an elegant mansion. But it's just to show that this isn't all of the things that are happening now with eco-villages. It's not necessarily new. It's been going on in different parts of the world in different ways for many, many years. Cultural traditions from the Kuna tribe off the coast. Of anyone know where the Kuna tribe lives?
Panama. Is it Panama?
Panama, yes, absolutely right. And the Kuna tribe is, they are a somewhat independent nation because they went to war against the Panama government because, as they put it, they're an indigenous tribe, and as they put it, the soldiers wanted to dance with their women. Can we get that as a euphemism? Yeah. So because the soldiers wanted to dance with their women, they went to war, and actually they were supported by a USer I always say USers, by the way, instead of Americans, or I say US Americans because having lived in many parts of the Americas, we are the only country that calls ourselves the Americans, and it's very offensive to many people in the South. So I want to encourage all of you to think about calling yourselves USers or US Americans so that you can distinguish yourselves as people from this country and not the Americans. So again, traditions. This is a man from Venezuela, and although he's wearing a kind of Western shirt, this is year 2000 more or less, he keeps to his shamanic traditions. So many people all over the world are keeping some of the traditions that hold them together as communities. Clean water, Kogi. Anyone know where the Kogis live? What country? Anyone hear of the Kogis?
Colombia, Sierra Madre.
Colombia. Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, actually. And the Kogis consider themselves to be the big brothers, and we're the younger brothers. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if it does to you. They maintain clean water. They drink out of this river, and they make their bridges out of natural structures. So this is just to remind us, this is an olive tree planted in Palestine 1,000 years ago, and it's to remind us of that ripple effect, and also how when we plant seeds, we won't necessarily live to see them bearing fruit. And yet people have, for centuries, for thousands of years, planted olive trees and didn't necessarily get to reap the results of that tree, and yet they planted them. And that's what I want to inspire all of you to do. Plant those seeds, and in seeds we're not always talking about physical seeds, but plant all of the seeds of change, all of the seeds of community, all of the seeds of sustainability, and you will see some ripple effects. And even if you don't, you will have planted the seeds. So now we'll move quickly to the Global Ecovillage Network, because I know that's something you're interested in. So the Global Ecovillage Network was founded in 1995. So in 2015, the Global Ecovillage Network will be in its 20th year. Very good. And here are some of the characters. I didn't have photos of everyone to put up here, but Declan Kennedy. Declan Kennedy is the man who brought permaculture to Western Europe. Andrew is the man who brought permaculture to the UK. You can tell I'm proud of him. But Declan Kennedy brought permaculture to the Western Europe. He also founded an eco-village called Lebensgarten, that's near Steyerberg in Germany. Very wonderful place. We have a couple of pictures of it coming up. And he also has served as the chairman of the advisory board for Gaia University. So very active man. He's been married to the late Margaret Kennedy. She just died last year, and she's a very important economist and worked on complementary currencies in Germany, got the local banks in the various regions to adopt complementary currencies. So it's a longer story, but if you want to hear more about that, I'm happy to tell you more about it. And this is Linda Joseph. She's one of the seed founders of the ENA, that's the Ecovillage Network of the Americas. Lucio Borio, and she is one of the founders of Torri Superiori in Italy. And this is our representative to the United Nations, Rob Wheeler. He also does clowning as a sidekick. If you want to start an eco-village, I hope you don't have too many loans. The sustainability, economic sustainability is not necessarily too great. You might need to do clowning or something on the other side. And this is our other representative to the UN. At least I was. Those were back in the days when I was a dancer. Okay, so the Ecovillage Network came out of a trust company called Gaia Trust, Ross and Hilda Jackson, and they decided that it was time to start to bring together people from what we might call intentional eco-villages to distinguish them from traditional eco-villages. Still good on sound? Wobbly. Okay, is that better? Okay, if you ever can't hear me, just raise your hand. Okay, so this is the first caravan at Findhorn. Anyone been to Findhorn? Dave. Yeah. Well, it's in Scotland, and in the northern part of Scotland, and some people decided that that was a good place to grow cabbages. And have you heard the cabbage story? Of the huge cabbages they grew. Well, we have some scientific reasons that we could speak about why the cabbages grew so big, but they believed it was because they were praying to the divas, who were the cabbage divas, and that's why the cabbages grew so big. So that's another story. This is Zeg community. This is a community. Does anyone know where Zeg is? Not Sweden, no. Eastern Germany. That's correct. And anyone know anything about Zeg? Zeg is a community, what?
Nonviolent communication.
Nonviolent communication is one of the things they do. Polyamory is one of the things that they do. And they believe that until we overcome our feelings of jealousy in our relationships, in our sexual relationships, we will not be able to have peace in the world. And they have developed a technique called the forum to help people deal with the many feelings that, as you can imagine, come up over the polyamory. And that's their kind of community center. They have a pub there, and they do singing and have all kinds of fun.
Liora, in the book that we're reading, there are 14 eco-villages talked about. Zeg is one of them. Oroville, Kalofifa, Senegal, Crystal Waters, Australia, Damanhur, Italy, Earthhaven, Eco-Village Ithaca, Findhorn, Konohana, Japan, LA Eco-Village, Sarvodaya, Sri Lanka, Siebenlinden in Germany, Svanholm, Denmark, Uba Fabrik, Germany, and Zeg.
Great. Okay, so I have been to most of those. As part of my role on the executive committee board of directors of the Global Ecovillage, I had a great opportunity to visit many eco-villages. So if you've been reading the book and you have questions about those eco-villages, I'm a potential source of information about what really happens. Not just for visitors. Okay, this is, again, Levin's Garden. That's Declan Kennedy, and that's their store. That's one of the reasons I put this photo up. They are fulfilling many of the functions of a village, and not every eco-village does. And one of the functions is having a store. So they have a community store, and you can go in and get the products that they have that you need, and then it's on a system. Sign up. So now we start going a little further south, and this is EPEC, and that's in Brazil. And they're doing a technique in which you fill sandbags with earth, and then you can make that into buildings. Anyone's ever seen that? Yep.
Super dope.
Super Adobe, yes. And this is the one of the houses in the eco-village that I helped to found. This is Wewekoito Eco-Village. And we were a group of not just ecologists, but we were a group of artists. So one of the things that was really important to us in our eco-village was to make it really beautiful. And you can see it is really lovely. There'll be more photos of Wewekoito. And this is, again, Zeg. One of the issues for people who want to make eco-villages is we want to grow food. Now, in certain climates, you can't grow food all year round. That's true in Germany. But they do a lot of permaculture gardens, and they can and they freeze, and they do a lot with the food that they grow. natural building. This is Global Ecovillage that's in South Africa. And as you can see, there's a great similarity to when we saw the photo of the Ecovillage in Africa, the original photo, to the kind of housing. So traditional housing and eco-villages sometimes have a lot of similarities. This is in Colombia. In Colombia, they use a lot of bamboo, or they call it guagua. Bamboo comes in many different sizes, and as you can see, this is a size that is really excellent for using for building. And they have some very good techniques for curing the bamboo so that it lasts a long time. And when they had the Hanover World, whatever they call that, they brought in pieces a huge construction all out of bamboo and showed that off. So it's amazing what you can make from bamboo if you just know how to cure it properly. How are we doing? Questions so far? Okay, you can also stop me with questions. Okay. So this is in this is in Iceland, and it's an eco-village called Solheimer, and it's been in existence for more than 50 years. And you can see that some of the other houses are not covered in this green roof. It's a very harsh climate. It's very cold in the winter, not like California. They call this winter. That's a laugh, right? I grew up in New York. So what have they done here? What can you see in this photo? Yeah.
There's grass growing on it.
Yes, and what does that do? Yes.
It insulates the building from wind.
That's right. And you could also potentially in a more spring or fall time, yes?
So, but wouldn't that be like a fire hazard?
Well, if you were in a dry climate, you might consider it a fire hazard, but since there's wet and snow a lot of the years, probably it's not such a problem. Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember reading in one of my classes about urbanization, how like in a lot of urbanized places, they start growing like plants upwards, like towards on houses, so that because we don't have like enough land for like plants and stuff, so.
Yep, that's a good contribution, and we'll see some buildings that have plants growing in between the buildings, also in an urban area. Yeah.
What does the sign say?
So the sign says, I don't know. I can't read it, and it's too long ago. I don't remember. Yeah.
Wouldn't having the plants grow on the actual building, wouldn't it like kind of deteriorate the structure, like roots, like going into the house, and how do they go about that?
You're absolutely right that that is a consideration you have to take into account, and it's the kind of roofing that they use that keeps it isolated. Oh. So I don't know the exact specifics of what kind of roofing they have there, but it would be a similar kind of roofing that you would use to make it impermeable to water. So in that particular climate, like if you can see on the other houses, they have some kind of asphalt roofing. So I imagine that's what they have under there. And if you notice, this building is also shorter, and that's because the house is partially underground. So putting your house underground, what does that do? Insulates it, correct. Because underneath the ground, it's not as cold or as hot as it is above ground. Yeah.
You have a photo of the inside of that?
I don't, I'm sorry. That would be great. I didn't get to go inside.
Do they let farm animals graze on top of their houses?
I have seen other houses where they have farm animals grazing on the roofs. I've seen highways where they have farm animals grazing on the median streets.
Have you ever seen like fruit grow?
Yes, and not in this particular place, but I have seen many people who have green roofs, and that is a strategy in cities especially to green your roofs. so that you can grow your plants on your roof. And there is a certain weight issue. I'm not so technically expert in telling you exactly how much weight and so on, but that information is available. So if you're going to put green on your roof, you have to check out the question of weight and how much the soil weighs and the plants. So technology, that's an interesting issue. Transport, this is in China, and they like to run around in golf carts. And solar, how you cook your food, solar, and there are many other issues around technology. I didn't put in slides around wind, and we know that the production of energy is a really important. How do we clean up our water? This is Fintorn again. This is what they call a living machine. Anyone heard of a living machine? Yes, it's to purify the water. So they pass the water, they recycle the water by passing it through this living machine. And when the water comes out, it is theoretically drinkable. So theoretically, because I don't want you to just go ahead and make yourself a living machine and then not test the water. So I say theoretically because if you've done it right, the water's drinkable. If you haven't, you better test it first to make sure you did it right. Yes.
Would it be considered a living machine because, like, would they add like a bacteria in it to clean it?
So they have various tanks in which they have plants that take the nutrients. So we know that plants eat nutrients, right? We know that. So what happens is that wastewater has a lot of nutrients, right? We know that? Yeah, makes sense? So plants eat the nutrients in the water, and therefore the water gets progressively nutrient-free, which makes it drinkable. Did I explain that right, Andrew? Yes. That's why you're not going to go out and just build one, but you could keep it in mind as an alternative. And here we are in California. What is our biggest issue in California right now?
Drought.
And drought relates to? Water, right. And I live in a county right now where composting toilets are illegal, where rainwater harvesting is illegal, and the recycling of water is only allowed if you use your laundry machine water. Does this make much sense?
Liora,
yes.
One of our community action teams, Lupita, who could not be here today, is focused on changing the California plumbing code to legalize institutional scale composting toilets so that when we rebuild Kresge, we can use composting toilets.
Yes. Yes. It's illegal to harvest rainwater because the theory is that that water should be going into the groundwater so that the vineyard owners can collect that water, but you can't. Does that make sense? No. So a lot of laws, a lot of customs don't make a lot of sense. Would you agree? And why is it that we smart people who can send people to the moon and beyond and do all kinds of things like driverless cars and so on, that we cannot seem to make plans that enable us to live in a way that as the indigenous people of Bolivia say, is buen vivir. Does anyone know what that means? Good living, right? Wouldn't it make sense to have enough water so we could make beautiful gardens, grow a lot of food, have healthy, organic food that we could all eat, yum yum? Doesn't that make sense? So, we go back to the Patriots. There's Dave smiling back there. We go back to the Patriots, all of those oppressions. We need to ourselves help ourselves support our friends and our neighbors and our classmates to get through the oppressions of the Patriots so we can think better. If we're emotionally upset, how is our thinking? Not good, right? When we're emotionally upset, are we thinking well? We're not. So, we live a lot of drama in our lives, right? So we need to have tools and techniques that enable us to go through that drama and get back to rational thinking. That makes sense? Okay, back to composting toilets. So this is a very simple one. This is in an eco-village in Colombia. It's called Sasardi. And in order to get there, you have to climb a waterfall. Well, not actually climb up the water, but you have to climb along a waterfall. It's about an hour's walk, and it's beautiful. This is back to Zeg. So this is the women's toilet, the women's sink spot. So again, you can, in simple ways, make things beautiful. And then we go back to traditions. This is in China. So in China, there are many different traditional groups. All over the world, there are many traditional groups. And one of the things we want to think about is how do we support people in maintaining their culture and their traditions while also having diversity. I love that hat. I wore my Cuban hat today. So if I had a hat like that, I might have worn that. So crafts. This is from South Africa. So another piece of eco-village design has to do with how do we support the artisans? How do we support people doing these kind of beautiful crafts in ways that are sustainable? Zeg community, again, how do we promote social conversation? Someone mentioned isolation, big issue for our society, especially in the US. How do we support with our sustainable communities conversations? Really important. People talking to other people. It was fun to do a think and listen, right? Gave us a chance to talk. We all love to talk. In Africa as well. So that's one of the new movements of GEN is to develop eco-villages in Africa and especially to support traditional villages to become eco-villages. Teaching, learning, sharing. Zeg community, once again, workshops. I think you could recognize Andrew in there. Albert Bates, he was another one of, along with Declan Kennedy and Max Lindiger, the three original regions of GEN, of Global Ecovillage Network. Albert was for the Americas. And this is Albert in Colombia teaching the people of Unguia permaculture. Very important to spread this knowledge to places where people have fewer resources. He founded the Eco-Village Training Center. Does anyone know where that is? Anyone ever? Yes? Oh, Dave does. You don't count, Dave. I'm sorry. You can't answer the question. What? Nope, not in California. Anyone ever heard of the farm? Tennessee. Okay. So the farm is one of the first intentional communities developed in the U.S., not the first, but one of them. It's been going since 1971. And Cuba has done a tremendous amount of food growing in the city of Havana. You all know about what happened to Cuba, 1992. Yep.
After the Soviet Union collapsed, they had to divest from fossil fuels.
Very good. And by divesting from fossil fuels, what happened to their food production? They had to localize, that's right. So they started growing, so some permaculture people from Australia, you've all heard of permaculture, right? Anyone not heard of permaculture? Yeah. Yep, not heard of permaculture. So permaculture is the ideal design system for designing eco-villages, but it's much more than that. Permaculture, in its broadest sense, has to do with how do we design so that we can have sustainable, regenerative planet and people. That's pretty broad, right? Gives us a little leeway, right, of things that we're interested in. So permaculture people came from Australia and said, oh, no problem, we know how to grow food. We'll just grow it right here in the city of Havana. And so they did. And they took every schoolyard, they took every empty lot, they took every patio and porch and roof that they could find, and they started growing food. And lo and behold, 65 to 75% of all the food eaten in the city of Havana is grown where? Locally, inside the city of Havana. What a concept. How much of Santa Cruz food is grown inside the city of Santa Cruz? Probably very little. Well, we got Trader Joe's, so who needs to grow our own food? Children. We can't forget about children and elders, as Andrew reminded me, and but having to think about how we want to raise our children in our eco-villages. Really important piece of it. How are we going to design for our elder years? When I helped to initiate Huehuecoyotl Eco-Village, I was 32 years old. Now I'm 68. I put my house up on a hill. Dave's been there. I wasn't thinking what would happen when I was 82, when I was 32, and we need to think about those things. You're all young. And then the other piece that I wanted to highlight, this was the first global forum on standards for eco-villages and regions in China, and Andrew and I were invited to be there. And I spoke about eco-villages, and Andrew spoke about permaculture for the Ministry of the Forestry. And the Global Ecovillage Network has also been involved with the UN. I mentioned that I had been a representative to the UN. So that's another piece of it. Like, how much are you going to be involved, not just in your local communities, but how much are you going to be involved in these global institutions? And, well, then lots of questions about, do you want to get involved in corporations? Do you want Lush that makes cosmetics to fund your project? There are lots of questions that you can all think about what your ethical stance might be on. Oh yeah. We signed, this is pretty funny, we signed an agreement that we would help them make an eco-village in China, not understanding anything of what we signed because it was all in Chinese. We never heard from them after that, but it would be very interesting sometime to find out what we actually signed. This is Andrew speaking to the Ministry of the Forestry, in which someone took the Bill Mollison, we brought along Bill Mollison's designer's manual. Any of you seen the designer's manual? No? Ah, Dave, you got to bring him in up.
Next quarter's class is all about permaculture.
Okay, so take that one too, because permaculture is the design system for sustainable communities, really. If you don't know permaculture, you can design, but if you know permaculture, you're going to do a much better job of it. So anyway, they took away the designer's manual. I got to keep track of time. They took away the designer's manual at lunchtime. The guy said, "Oh, could I just borrow that to look at it for lunch?" And after lunch, he didn't bring it back. He didn't show up. And Andrew and I were like, this guy walked away with our $80 book. And around 6 o'clock, after we were just kind of packing up, the guy shows up with 2 shopping bags full of photocopies. Okay, so now we'll get a little bit more to the present-day Global Ecovillage. This is Kosha Joubert. She is one of the founders of Siebenlinden Ecovillage, which is in Germany, is East Germany as well. And she is a graduate. She got her master's with Gaia University, and she also is the president of GEN International for the last number of years. And this is Javiera Carrion. She's from Chile. She's a permaculture designer, and she's a teacher, and she also got her master's from Gaia University. And she is now developing CASA, which is the Ecovillage Network of the rest of the Americas, all the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking part of the Americas. So CASA is the Consejo de Asentamientos Sustentables de las Américas. So this is a very important development in GEN. So GEN, instead of having 3 regions, which it did previously, now has 5 regions. Africa is one, and the Americas is the other, the Latin part of the Americas. So this has been a major shift, and what has happened as a result is that traditional villages, there is now a focus on traditional villages becoming eco-villages. Now in the Lifkin book, there is a mention of Sri Lanka, Sarvodaya, which is a Gandhian, a following of the Gandhian principles of community and spirituality. And what they did is they created a whole organization that goes out on a volunteer basis to help villages become more like eco-villages. And what I loved about it is it's a 5-step process, and step number 5 is once you've done it in your own village, what do you do?
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward, right. Teach it to the next one. And I think that's a really key part of creating these mycelial networks. So that's Javiera's project in El Manzano in Chile. And this is the teaching space that they built out of, what? Straw bed. So one of the things that GEN has done in the recent years as well is to focus on education. This is Greg Landway, another graduate of Gaia. I'm not plugging this too much. But they focused on education. They created Gaia Education, which is a permaculture design course is traditionally 2 weeks. And the Ecovillage design course, which is where Andrew and I met at Findhorn in Scotland, is a 4-week course. So that's Gaia Education. I'll give you their website later. And then out of that, also, Andrew and I met there and decided to form Gaia University, which has bachelor's, master's, postmasters, and maybe eventually we'll have doctoral programs. So our understanding is that experiential learning has so much more life to it than just sitting in a classroom, listening to what people up here have to say, and then spitting it back, right? So we really believe in that, and this woman here, the one who looks the most attentive, that's Katerina Weber, and she was getting her master's degree, and she did that by building herself a straw bale house and documenting the whole project of how she got the permits and what she had to go through with the bureaucracy and all of the steps that she had to go through in making her house. And she did a great job, put it all in her portfolio, and earned herself a master's degree by doing something that she loved and was passionate about. And it was also really useful. This is Declan Kennedy and Margaret Kennedy's daughter, and she is a dancer, and she wrote a book on the Lavande technique, and she got a master's degree by doing something that she loves. So another piece of what CASA is CASA is trying to put together all of the different movements in the South, and one of those movements is a mobile movement. So So caravans are part of the CASA network and therefore part of GEN. And this is the project that Dave mentioned, La Caravana Arcoiris por la Paz, of which I was on for 7 years, lived in a tent for 7 years in my 50s, and it was great fun. So I'm quickly going to go through the rest of the slides because I see I'm going over time here. We do have to be out, right, at 3:45? Yep, okay. So this is Tepoztlan in Mexico. This is the setting for Huehuecoyotl Ecovillage. This was our initial plan. Of course, everything came out a little different. This is how it looks from the air. 14 houses now, about 5 acres, 3 hectares, 5 acres. That's our community center. And we held the ENA meeting when ENA got going, Ecovillage Network of the Americas. So you can see Linda Joseph there and a couple of the other likely suspects. That's a special place for me because that's my house. So I have a little house in Mexico. And it's all adobe and stone and wood, and that's how it looks from the inside. That's how I used to look. And, you know, home of many wonderful communal suppers. I made that stained glass window in the back. And Andrew and I got married there. At least we had our spiritual wedding there. And these are some women from a local village. I helped them form a sewing cooperative and worked with them for 4 years so that they would become sustainable. So that's a part of the community outreach that I was talking about. And I think you might know who that is. So we held some meetings there, and that's Nala Walla. Some of you might know her. She's a dancer. She's also a Gaia graduate and advisor. And there he is again. Oh my God. Keeps popping up. They made him cut off his hair, I think, when he was a paper professor. And then so out of the Huehuecoyotl project grew La Caravana Arcoiris por la Paz. And this was founded by someone you might have now figured out who that is. And that's Alberto Cruz. Alberto is another founder, co-founder of Huehuecoyotl Ecovillage. And you know, we got him at his best. He's also involved with CASA and Jen. He just came back from the meeting that they had in Senegal. So the caravan had a lot of adventures. This was on the way to visit the Zapatistas. We sometimes had to all get out of the bus because we were crossing bridges that maybe would hold the bus or not. We sometimes even had to fly through the air. That was when we were going from Panama to Colombia on a pirate ship. And sometimes we got really stuck in the mud. Here we went to visit the Zapatistas when they made their first neoliberal, gathering against neoliberalism and in favor of whatever, galactic something or other. And we did a lot of theater, was with ecological messages. And we worked a lot with children. We helped them learn how to make stilts and to do things that would be a lot of fun for them. And one of the things we did with indigenous people were to help them make theater plays of their history, to recreate their own indigenous cultural history so that they would remember it and teach it to their children. And picked up a lot of garbage and taught people about recycling. And this was the first women's peace village of Ecuador. I got a grant from the U.S. Department of Education and Culture that helped us to bring together women leaders from all over Ecuador. And you can see the huge variety there. This was the gathering that Dave mentioned. This is Call of the Condor. Well, this is Machu Picchu, but the gathering was nearby. in this beautiful place along the sacred river. 800 people came from many, many different traditions. We had many events, lasted about a month. Well, all of that was very tiring. So you might ask, why do we do all of this stuff? Why do we get so exhausted doing all this activity? Well, that's why we do it. For the kids, for future generations, and you're a part of that too. Those eyes of hope. Somos el futuro. Who knows what that means? So we need to all work together, make that network, make those nice webs, so we can at the end celebrate. We did it. So now it's your turn. So what we're going to do, we need to put up the, okay, my handy tech man. So what we're going to do now is to break out into some groups, give you a chance to stand up, and we've got some tables here, and what we're going to ask you to do is to do some designing. We're going to give you only 20 minutes to do that, so we have time for some questions and answers. We're not going to get feedback from your design process, so just be as wild and crazy or whatever as you want. Get creative about it. We are going to give you some topics. So we're not expecting that you're going to design a whole ecovillage. What we're going to ask you to do is take one aspect, there we go. Take one aspect of ecovillages, like economy, like how we're going to deal with children and youth and elders, like how we're going to decide what our location is going to be, right? All of these are issues that you will need if you're going to make any kind of sustainable community project. So we're going to ask each group to take a piece of that. And then at another point, Dave said that he will possibly give you a chance to report back. What I would like to ask you to do, though, is while you're doing this, think of any questions that you have, and we'll take a couple of the burning questions and see if we can answer those. Got it? Okay. So the way you're going to do it is just stand up and find a table. Make sure that each table has about at least 6 people. Okay. I'm going to let you pick your topic. So once you pick your topic, just go for it. And I'm giving you 10 to 20 minutes.
Let's do that.
Now, what we're going to do is until, for another 10 minutes, we'll take questions in a group, and then we'll end at 3:45 exactly, so you can get on to your next class if you have one. And if you don't, and you want to stick around, I'll be here, and Andrew, who also lived in an eco-village, Fraser's Park, and was on the board of the European Ecovillage Network, will be here as well, and Dave, who's visited eco-villages and knows quite a lot about sustainable community. So we'll all be here to answer questions or give you real-life examples of how it really feels. And as I went around, I tried to give some of the groups examples of issues that have come up around animals, around decision-making, around governance, around conflict resolution. And these are real. So it's important to find a good balance between I am idealistic and I want to do something really good for the world and I believe in community and I'm going to go out and do it. And if you don't have that energy, you probably will never get around to doing it. So you got to have a good balance of that kind of like, let's just do it. Balanced with, let's be realistic about what it might be like. Huehuecoatl is 32 years old, and as a result, the people who started Huehuecoatl in their 30s are now in their 60s. Well, things change. Life happens while you're making other plans. So if you, oh yeah, I know the Beatles were also. I'm from the 60s, I am too. So if you put your house on a hill, which is what I did with my house, that was great when I was 32, and I could energetically climb that hill, and now I'm 68, and I'm imagining what it might be like at the age of 88 to climb that hill. So this is just as an example of how some forward thinking about how long you imagine you'll be in your project, or in your eco-village, or in your, what is it, you're making co-housing, or cooperative. Think about, like, you know, what's that going to be like for me in 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? Yeah? Okay, questions?
Got a mic I'll go around with.
Okay. Come on. I can't believe you don't have questions and you're all so tired. Yes.
Can you use the mic? Yeah.
My question is, so say if I were to have a piece of land that I wanted to start an eco-village on, and I vaguely knew like these principles and had a vague idea of what I wanted from it, what would be my first practical step, aside from like visiting and kind of surveying what would be good?
Could you repeat the question?
So the question is, if I got a piece of land, or I saw a piece of land that I liked or whatever, and I wanted to make an eco-village, what would be my first practical steps in working toward making an eco-village? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Take a stab, that's really, I don't know. Anyone want to have a chance to make a positive contribution, lean into it?
I guess the first thing I would do would be kind of like know the community that you're trying to be a part of. Knowing your location and where the community, the rules and all that, the customs, the culture is very, very important.
I think that's a very good contribution. Anyone else? Yes?
I think a good first step would be to look at your land in particular and see what benefits your land in specific has, because it depends on, you know, the ecology that's growing on your land currently. So you could have a different variety of benefits you can pull from it.
Yep, that's a kind of permaculture approach, right? Yep.
I would start by building a really solid group of friends who were like spiritual friends, you know, just really, really connected. And then with that small group, I think we could do anything.
So that's an important piece, and 6 to 8, that's a good number. Those of you who worked in groups, maybe up to 10. Don't go too much bigger, because you've got to find a balance between diversity and homogeneity, right? So homogeneity, is that a word? So you've got to find some kind of a balance there, because if your group gets too big, you're going to have so many opinions, you're not going to be able to decide on anything. So that's your seed group, that's your core group. Once you have a core group and you've made certain decisions about these kinds of issues, then you attract people who basically agree around the decisions that you've made. Otherwise, you have people coming in, and you know that old syndrome, someone comes in and they know better? So if you've got some agreements around these kinds of issues, then you can say, this is what this group wants to do. We're open to people contributing, and these are our kind of deal breakers or no deal breakers. These are the things that are really important to us. So if you're vegans and you want a vegan community, that's a no deal breaker. You don't want people coming in who are saying, let's raise animals for food, because that's going to lead you to what happened at Sieb and Linden, where they broke into 2 communities because they couldn't decide what to do about domestic animals and about the animals that were being raised for food. So you've got certain things that you need to make decisions about in the beginning. Yeah, and the other things mentioned were really good too. More questions? Yeah.
This is kind of like a question for everyone because I think that eco-villages are an amazing concept, but it's kind of concentrated in this group of people who are the ones that would adopt the eco-village concept. Could it ever become a global thing, like something that the mainstream people could like to get into? And if so, like how do we approach that? How do we make it a bigger thing?
Okay, anyone want to have some comments about that? Okay, Global Ecovillage Network has become more global now because they are working in countries like Senegal. I did mention this, but in Senegal they now have a ministry for eco-villages inside of the Ministry for Environment. That came about because a woman who was a Western woman went there and helped some villages become eco-villages, traditional villages become eco-villages. And that had that ripple effect. And because of that, now the Ministry of Eco-Villages has now a projection to do 500 eco-villages in Senegal, and eventually to do 14,000 eco-villages in Senegal, which is half of all of the villages that exist in Senegal. Well, that is going mainstream in a country like Senegal, where traditional villages are still the way in which most people live. So I think that that is a piece of the how do you go more global. It's somewhat possible like that in parts of the Americas. Asia, Thailand is now working with the government, and the government is supporting the development of eco-villages. Burma is another country where they're doing it. So I think if you want to work globally, it's really positive to work in countries like that.
What about the problem with population size? Like you have an eco-village with a few people, if it gets bigger, it gets a little harder to control the situation.
Yeah, so her question had to do with what about population of eco-villages? I thought you were going to talk about global population, that's another issue. But population of eco-villages is an important one because you are going to plan for a certain population. How many people do you need for it to be a village? How much of a village do you really want it to be? Is 500 people the size of a village? Well, in Mexico, where our eco-village is, we have a village nearby, 2 kilometers away, and there are about 1,500 people in that village. There are no eco-villages other than, say, Oroville in India. It's not exactly an eco-village, more like a city, a collection of villages that are that size. So, it's a very interesting question. How do you plan for that, and how many services of a village are you really trying to include in your eco-village? Well, one of the things that's happened, for example, Damanhur is a federation of communities. It's not a community. And that's a really interesting concept because they have 20 people living in shared houses. Well, in a shared house of 20 people, you can get agreement. Are we going to eat meat or not? Are we going to have children in our house or not? There are many issues that affect you very much in practical terms that have to do with how you're going to decide. But then they have a federation of communities that enable them to elect the mayor of their whole valley is a Damanhurian. And in the nearest town, they said that mayor who was a Damanhurian did such a great job, brought in EU money, fixed the roads, did the hospital, wasn't corrupt and so on. We want one of those too. And so now they have elected a mayor who's a Damanhurian. So I see that we're up for time, and before you go, we're going to just do one thing, and then those of you who want to stick around, please do, and we're happy to answer questions. So this is the way we end things often. We go like this, stand up.